Hello there, my name is TerraXT, and this is another episode of my weekly dev diary. Today is February the 5th, 2021, and we are still under COVID lockdown. I had a rough week at work. It wasn't exactly busy, but I ended up spending a lot of time working on a side project, staring at a bunch of code in Java and SharePoint and C++. So by the end of my days, I was pretty exhausted. So I didn't get as much done this week, but I focused my time on important things. So without further ado, let me get into some of the things that I changed, and then I want to ramble on a little bit about where I'm taking this project, where my goals are, and maybe a little bit of background on what got me into programming game design in the first place. So, one of the first things I did this week is I thought it'd be really cool to have a what the fuck bar. What the fuck bar down in the bottom right hand corner. You can see it right there. It's like, what the fuck? What am I looking at? That is a wall. That is a guard and he is friendly. That is an NPC. And I got to get within, I need to increase the range. I got to get within 2,000 of him. He is a hostile mannequin. It tells me the owner of certain items, like these are build items, and this is owned by the server. This is a chest, it's usable. There's some things that I don't have names on just yet, and I need to work on the functionality. Like that's owned by the server, but it's also usable. And the portal doesn't even have a name. But it's things that I've been this is something I've been wanting to put in. It was on my little to-do list that I just hadn't gotten to yet. So that was done. Building mode, I updated it a little bit. B opens up the building mode. I put a little tooltip there for some information for me, which, the building button's not below it, but that's okay. The building button is now down on the bottom left-hand corner, and it's dynamically added by this module. This module is self-contained now. There's only inputs that is in the character controller class, but otherwise it's all in its own folder, and its code is all self-contained. I was really happy about all that. Took a lot of rewriting to make that possible. Something that did change is the clock I compressed into one little GUI instead of having two separate ones, one for day part and one for the clock. I did give the day, you can't really tell, but I gave the day a little bit of work. Not a whole lot. I tried to adjust some things. It's still rough as hell. And part of it's because I've got time sped up right now. A lot faster than it's supposed to be, but I wanted to experiment with the transitions. I didn't get a lot of time to devote to that. I fired it up and got tired of it, got frustrated and moved on. So I did change around the building bar just a little bit. There are no longer ramps. I took those out completely. I replaced them with stairs, which I don't actually have the tooltip and everything. That is a very recent addition. These are stairs that I made myself. I took the Unreal Engine stairs and some brushes and made my own model inside Unreal Engine, then exported it to Blender. And I didn't do a good job because if you look there, the textures are kind of wonky. That's my fault. But anyhow, I did put stairs into the game and took out the ramps. Rotation does work, and now it goes a whole full 360 degrees. I fixed a lot of the overlapping. There's still some overlapping issues with the doors. I think it's just the doors, but I do still have a couple of overlapping issues. I added no build zones. So this building right here is in a no build zone. It's owned by the server. So I don't have permission to build there. I have to actually go outside of that area. It's invisible on the server itself. So if I place a couple of things here, you'll see another thing that I added in. You no longer can place objects on top of objects, which was a problem before. With the exception of the build claim itself, and also you notice it has me as the owner. The build claim itself is not an object in the game right now. It's kind of, I can walk through it. No, I can't walk through it. I collide with it, but objects don't collide with it, building objects. Because it's designed to be inside of your building, and I don't know how I'm going to do that yet. I'm thinking about making it a safe or a pedestal or something like that, maybe a blueprint. I'm just not sure how it's going to work out. So anyhow, there's that. Walls, I changed the glow texture to it. I might have went a little bit overboard because you can't even see the texture of the wall itself anymore. But you can cycle through the meshes just by using your scroll button, which I think a lot of people will be happy about. Doors no longer snap where they shouldn't. And you can't place double doors anymore. So there's a door, and I can't place another door on top of that door. That's really nice. Um, let's see. Windows were a problem before. That has been resolved. Windows will place on Windows and will not place again on Windows. Another issue that I had was the lights were able to be placed on the windows. As you see, it cannot be placed on a window anymore. It can only be placed on a wall. It cannot be placed on a door. So only walls. So boop. And it does notice, it knows where it is on the wall. So that's the thing. Right now, the light actually shows through the wall, which is kind of broken. It's because I got the light piece going back a little bit too far. I can fix that, but I hadn't got around to it just yet. So there's that. I haven't put triangles in yet. I want to have different kinds of build structures. Let's demonstrate the stairs real quick, just to give you an example of the stairs. They do snap to floors and foundations, and they do rotate, so you can choose which way to actually place them. And you can climb up on top of them. Oh, well, if I put it in the right spot, but you can climb up on top of them. But speaking of which, I put it in the wrong spot. What do? Well, we have a new delete function. You'll notice down in the bottom right hand corner it changed to R. The building menu is now in removal mode, and you'll see the box isn't too great. During the daytime it looked okay. I'm gonna have to edit this box and make it a little brighter or something, more opaque, I guess. I wanted it to be translucent so you could see through it some, but I guess that's not going to be a thing. It tells me that I can delete things. If I delete this claim that I'm looking at right now, delete key. Okay, now I don't have permission anymore. I can't delete anything. Delete, 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 delete. It won't let me do anything. That's because I no longer own this area. Even though those buildings belong to me, I do not have ownership of the area. Now I do. So if I go back to delete mode, you'll see that I'm actually able to delete structures now. It's saying that I can delete structures. So that will be replaced later, but it's the building blocks for the deletion system is actually in place. So that's just a toggle back and forth. You can go from delete mode to build mode. Let's see. Things that I've added. The building structures have hit points, durability, resistances, and absorption. I haven't really gone into that too far just yet because I'm waiting. I'm looking at another building system that has destructibles, and I'm looking to see how they did it and how I can do it better, or maybe I can implement the way that they did it. But I want to have some kind of physics tied to the foundation or the floor below them, below the item. So if you destroy them, everything above it destroys or something like that, and I want it to actually fall apart. That's the general idea. Then I've got to work on actually being able to hit and damage them. I don't have that in place. I've just got the mechanics behind it. You know, the doors are ready to accept damage. I just don't have the ability to damage them just yet. Resistances and absorption comes into play because of siege devices and things of that nature. Some buildings will not, you'll need certain abilities that can damage structures or certain magic that will be able to damage wood, stuff like that. Those will all be able to be defined. Pretty much, if it's wood, fire will damage it. It'll have some resistance to fire, but not much. So that's kind of how I do it. I don't know if I'm going to allow for buildings to be set on fire, but I should, because that would aesthetically make a lot of sense. But at least they're going to be able to take damage from fire. But if you build out of stone or steel, or whatever I put in the game, different materials wise, I can actually set the attributes of that material. So you can have like reinforced stone, reinforced wood even, I guess, or treated wood or something like that. You can have different structure types with different types of resistances associated with them. And obviously the material components would be a little bit more expensive for those when I put that into play. Now, one of the questions that came up before was, why I'm spending so much time on the building system. It's a very valid and good question because I enjoy building. I enjoy having something on the server that is mine. Or I've at least run guilds or been in guilds and we have owned property. And it's really fun to compete and have that ownership of something on the server that you can call your own, your piece of the land. So that is why building is so important to me. It really can drive a community to play a game for a long time. But there's a secondary reason why, is because the core mechanic of the game design that I'm building is based around players being able to build just about anything. I want you to be able to plant trees. I want you to be able to build your own house. But let's go beyond that. Let's say you form a fellowship, which is a miniature version of a guild. It's you and a couple of friends, somebody's a leader. I want people to build a fellowship that can actually take two players that are building in the same place, can upgrade that to a camp if they're in a fellowship. And the fellowship can be upgraded to a guild at one point. So this idea behind the fellowship, the camp itself is an individual entity ran by that fellowship, and the leader of that fellowship is basically the mayor or the owner of that property. He can delegate permission so that other people can build on it. And you can allow other people to join your camp and they can have a plot inside of it. The mechanics aren't in place, but this is what I'm going to. That's why building is so important and getting it right. To elaborate further on that, if you get up to, say, 10 people, or let's say 5 people in your camp, the actual numbers I haven't really decided on yet, but let's say you get 5 people in your camp, they're all building their little structures, happily, having fun. Then an option comes up somehow, or there's a discovery that the owner can actually make where they can choose to, let's just say it's an achievement. I really don't know, but something's going to pop on the screen, let them know that they can upgrade that camp to a settlement. Settlement allows for more players to join and more building options. And building options here is where they start taking off, because where an individual can build all the walls and the floors and stuff like that, you could build that inside. You could build your own buildings inside the plots in that settlement and assign NPCs to those buildings and stuff like that. That's my idea, at least. How you don't build NPCs. You have to actually hire them, find them, etc., etc. Rescue them. There's going to be mechanics in place to where you can gain NPCs with stats, and you may or may not want that NPC, or you may want that guy to do a certain task because he has the stats for it. But at any rate, the settlement can then build certain structures. They will have to be researched by the settlement, but they can actually build like a blacksmith. They can build certain things like that. I don't know if the settlement will have access to a blacksmith or a smithy, but they will have access to certain things. Then say you get 25 people that join your band or your cause, and they're building in that area. I mean, actually building. They have to have their buildings inside that area. You don't just have to have a guild, or at 25 players, you probably don't have a guild. But my point is, at a certain amount of players, now you have the ability to upgrade it to a town. The town comes with a town crier, which is a built-in NPC that will actually give you quests and stuff like that and tell you the goings on. Now you can build more structures inside your settlement. It's not a settlement. Now it's a town. You can build more things, and you can upgrade that at, say, 100 players or 50 players to a city. And then say you get 200 players, you can upgrade it to a metropolis. And the idea is that you grow this settlement over time, and there's some linear progression there, and you have ownership and stake in this town as a guild at some point. You start out as a fellowship, and maybe that's all you need. You don't want to have a guild. You just have to have a number of players living in your town and in that community, supporting that community to upgrade it. A fellowship could potentially run an entire metropolis if you have enough players assisting you. But I think there's going to be a cutoff to where a guild has to run a metropolis or maybe even a city. and a fellowship can only go up to maybe the town level. Not sure how I'm going to do that just yet. But the point is, you're able to expand. Now, what about guilds, you might be thinking? What about fellowships that don't want to open a town and have it open to the public? They want to have their own little private place. That's where forts and stuff like that come in. These building structures are probably only going to be available to guilds, and a guild would probably require maybe 20 people, I guess. I don't know what the actual metric I'm going to put on that is, since fellowships can be made with 2 people. It's kind of like a permanent party. Well, it's a mini guild. Think of it as a mini guild. And it just upgrades to a guild at some point if you choose to upgrade it, which gives you a lot more functionality. So guilds will have access to building within their territory, specifically their town, because, keep in mind, the fellowship can make a settlement. You can grow that to a town. Now at the town, at the town point, you've got the option to go from a town to a city, or the town to a keep or a castle or something like that, which will have a different progression. At that point, you're a guild, and you're opting to make this a fortification or a military structure versus a town. It will still function as a town, but you'll have access to, as a guild, you'll have access to building walls, siege weapons, siege mechanics, stuff of that nature. Does it sound really cool? Do you see where my mind's going with this? That's kind of where I'm heading with this, with the building system. I want it to be very robust, and it ties nicely in with some of the other ideas that I have. Now, how does this all work? Well, when you build a house, you own a parcel of land. You pay taxes to the gods or to the server gods or something like that. Whatever you want to call them. You pay taxes. It's your cost for owning land in the game. When you form a settlement, now you are a patron of the people that are inside your settlement. Their taxes now come to you. But you are now responsible for the taxes on all the land of the settlement. So there's a trade-off. This lends to the whole feudal system where there's patrons, vassals, lords, kings. Cities can fall into this structure. A guild that is large enough and has the in-game financial backing can conquer and hold a huge territory with multiple cities under their control, paying taxes to them, but they are required to pay the taxes for all the land that they encompass. So there's going to be a balancing act on how much territory you want to control, how many people you have available to control said territory, and that includes your vassals. Because the assumption will be that vassals will not pay all your taxes. You can't just get a free ride because you have a whole bunch of vassals underneath you, unless they're like tightly packed together. Then, if they are, then that makes sense. But if you're extending your territory out to get another vassal, then you're going to be responsible to pay the taxes on all that territory you extended to. So it's a different set of ownership. Land can be owned by a person, a guild, and a town all at the same time. And there's a hierarchy to it. Just like with characters, there will be a hierarchy where there's a patron-vassal relationship between all characters. You don't have to be in the feudal system. You can be classless. That is your choice. But if you are a patron of somebody, then you get experience and maybe a financial benefit, like maybe if a percentage of the currency that they gain from quests or something. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that just yet, but your vassals pay up to you, but it's not manual, and it doesn't come out of their pocket. It's just automatic. You get X% of what they gain, experience, maybe even coin. That one I'm not too sure about, but at least you'll get like 1 or 2% of their experience. That adds up the more vassals that you get as a patron. As a vassal, you're rewarding not only your patron, but if you're in a guild, you're also rewarding the guild with guild experience. So it all kind of has different tiers so that all players are interconnected and interwoven, and so is the mechanics of the economy and the world. That's what I'm trying to get to. It is very, very complicated. There's a lot of math involved, and the building system is kind of at the foundation of all that. You can't have a thriving world like that if players can't build stuff. If they've just got to rely on pre-made cities that take forever to build and you can't modify them. I want you to be able to, if you say this is Main Street and I want to have a forge right there, I'm going to tear down that wood shop and build a forge in its spot. Then you should be able to do it. You should have that much control over your territory. Unfortunately, I don't have any kind of land modification in place right now. I may have to break the engine to figure out if there's a way to level the land once it's in runtime. I'm not really sure if you can modify the terrain. There are voxel technologies that allow you to do it, kind of like in Minecraft or that planet game, New Sky or No Man's Sky. I played it for a while. But I don't have that in Unreal Engine just out of the box. If I do figure out a way to implement something like that, that would be amazing. Like at least like Life is Futile. I kind of like theirs, but then again, there was parts of it I didn't like. Um, so we'll see where that leads over the course of the development phase. So that leads me on to my last topic. Well, actually, no. My second to last topic. Another question that I was asked is what got me into game development. I'll try to make this one short. Back in 1995, I picked up Ashran's Call. I was just fresh out of the Marine Corps. Had a young child. He ran around me in my room, my office or game room at the time. He would run around me and dance, and we'd listen to music while I played games. It was cool like that. I wouldn't, it wasn't like a TV babysitter or anything. He was enjoying watching me play games, and then I'd stop and play with him. But I picked up Ashran's Call and got really immersed in it. After the first hour of that, I put it down because I wasn't able to play for too long. And I was like, oh my God, it's like real life. That's what I thought in my head. We're talking 1995. This is the first of the 3D MMO games multiplayer. Um, it looked nothing. It looked terrible in comparison to what I have on my screen right now. What you're seeing is far superior to what Ashran's Call looked like. And mechanics wise, it's probably somewhat better. Um, I love the game though, and I played EverQuest. Okay, so what I did is I went to a bookstore and I picked up a book by Andre Lamoth called 3D Game Programming Gurus, I think. And I picked up a book on Borland C++ and a couple more game development books and started playing around with them. I'd already played Total Annihilation and Command and Conquer and made modifications to the mods to those, which is basically loading up 3D Studio Max, making some changes to the textures and models, and they're so small, even little discrepancies are hardly noticeable. So I made like aliens for Total Annihilation, which was a whole new race, and that was cool and all. And I don't remember what I did for Command and Conquer, but I made like something. It was structures or something. I really don't remember. Um, but I did some stuff and piddled around with modifications, and I thought I'd give my shot at game development. It took me about 6 months. 6 months later, I had nothing more than a black 3D world that looked kind of like the Matrix, kind of, but not really. It was just a flat plane of existence that it was in 3D. Andrew Lamoth helped me out a lot with that, reading his book on Matrix math and 3D design. It was not multiplayer, had no networking. It had a UI, which I was actually getting pretty proficient at making UIs in C++. It had a UI that looked like a double helix, that one side filled with mana and the other side filled with health, and you could actually karate chop your sword. You'd swing it like a karate chop, not like that. It was like, whoa! Just, it just went because I didn't know how to do animations at the time. It just chopped and it would actually hit a box on the screen. And your guy didn't look like this. It was a stick man. He was a legit stick man in 3D. So yeah, that was 6 months of my life down the drain. So I put down game development and I kind of resigned to the fact that I probably wasn't going to be doing that. In about 2000, roughly 2000, 2001, I don't remember the exact year, Wolfpack Studios approached me to become a game developer. They wanted me to be a game designer for Shadowbane and help out with that. Um, I got invited to Copper Tavern or something like that in Austin, Texas. It was a get together that they had to showcase some avian race that they had come out with, and got to talking to them, and that's kind of how that all kicked off. But anyhow, Ubisoft bought them out, and I never got the job. I was supposed to come in for work. I called them because I was going to travel down there and asked them when I was at. I called them, I think, on a Friday and asked them, what time am I expected to be there on Monday? And I got somebody from Ubisoft or Microsoft. I think it was Ubisoft. Somebody from Ubisoft answered the phone and said, "I'm sorry, we don't know who you are." And then they went in to explain that they had bought out Wolfpack Studios had sold themselves to Ubi, and I was like, "Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Never mind. I was supposed to start today." And they asked me a bunch more questions, but then they were just like, "No, no, thank you." And I was like, "Okay, no, thank you, thank you, thank you, no, thank you." So anyhow, that's how that transpired. And fast forward to now, which is 21 years from then, I watched a couple of videos, and I was eagerly awaiting Ashes of Creation. And they're in development right now, so I'm getting to see some behind the scenes stuff. They're developing it in Unreal Engine. So I watched a few engine videos and a couple of tutorials, and I was like, you know what? I can do that as child's play. I knew nothing about Blueprint, and I'm coming from a C++ background, which I know most game developers use C++. So I was like, I got this. I found out shortly that if I want to make it extensible and other people to be able to help me out, I need to keep it in Blueprint. So I had to rewrite some of the underlying mechanics that I started with in C++ because I didn't know how to do it in Blueprint back into Blueprint. That led me to things like the color wheel here. This little color wheel is what colors the character in the character creation screen. Well, this is the code behind it. It was actually one page of C++ code. That's it. It did not even that. It was like, I don't know, half a page, 200 lines, something like that. It turns into this, which actually this is pretty. But this is a lot of math, just telling where I'm clicking on that image and how that translates into a color. So at any rate, this was all code. I had to rewrite it in Blueprint, and it was a big learning challenge because I was not familiar with Blueprint. So that took me about a week to get to the point where I could just do this and learn Blueprint. Then once I got past that, now I'm to the point where I'm writing entire modules. This is my building module. This I posted on Discord. This is a screenshot of the folder structure. Basically, everything to do with my building module is in here. There's the UI, there's all the meshes, there's my materials, there's the icons, which actually should be under UI, but I left them there. And there's all the blueprints. The blueprints are actually the core functionality. There's the module itself. The only thing that's in my character, anybody that's familiar with Unreal, the only thing that's actually in my character, oh, it's under inputs, is this right here. These are the inputs for the building system. That's it. It just points to that module, which is added in. And that says, boom, you can build. And it does all of the workhorse of that guy is all right here in this building module event graph. That's all the different things that it does. Well, it's kind of a misstatement because it's all broken down into separate functions and stuff, which expand out, but there's obviously more to it than meets the eye, like transforms and stuff like that. This is the snapping mechanics, permissions and snapping that you're looking at right now. But at any rate, this is the actual blueprint for building module, and it does all of the work, or well, most of the work. Some of the work's actually handed off to these guys. Like doors are usable, so they have their own framework built into them. And then I've got a base part base right there, which it has the mechanics that are inherited by everybody, like how to switch meshes. There's not a lot in here really. And I think just, oh yeah, building itself, when the server starts up, it has to be able to build itself. That's pretty much it. Base collision is handled in that one. The biggest part of this one right here is actually the settings. The class defaults, that's what dictates all of the other children that are based off of that. So I just set them all up in there, so it's all kind of consistent. And the stairs that I just added in are in here. And there's the stairs model that I made. That's what they look like. So that, I hope, answers that question. The only other question I think I had outstanding was somebody asked, I don't remember who it was, but it was in a private message. Somebody asked me where I was going with this project. It was kind of a rude-ish question in my mind. What are you doing? Well, I got a good answer for that. I thought it'd be better to answer him in a video. So I'm going to leave the screen on the way it is. Sorry. I don't want to leave you on a black screen, but I'm going to rant a little bit. Where am I going with this? Well, I originally started out, like I said a couple of minutes ago, learning. I wanted to learn Unreal Engine. Just, I knew everybody, it was the new thing. It's a fad. They got all these free tools that they're investing in, like Blender and stuff like that, and Megascan Pixel Megascans or whatever, Quixel Megascans. And I was like, you know what? I want to learn all this stuff. I think it'd be pretty cool. So I fired it up, started learning, and one thing led to another. Now, 6 months later, I have invested probably less than $50 in currency. But in terms of time, I'm probably, right now, I'm probably at about 1,000 hours, give or take, into it. That's over the course of probably 4 months. Most of it's on the weekend and after hours because I do have a job, kid, family, dogs, cats. I have a lot of commitments. Mostly it's job. So that said, where I'm going with this is I'm trying to develop a game that I can play, but that I would enjoy. But obviously, as you all know, if you're writing your own game that you can enjoy, how much enjoyment is there in playing a game that you make? Think about that for a minute. There's not that much enjoyment in it. Sure, you enjoy it a little bit. You get to play it with your friends and stuff like that, but you know everything. You know all the ins and outs. You know all the little cheats or all the little secrets. There's nothing to discover, nothing to explore. That's not fun. Building it is, and if you're not the builder, playing it is. But what I think would be better is I look at all of the time and the wasted potential of all these game developers, big companies and indie game developers alike. They reinvent the wheel over and over and over. It might take game company A 10 years to make their title. And they have the intellectual property rights, the IP to that game and the code behind it, and they don't release it, or it gets bought by some company like Microsoft, just goes up on a shelf and gets dusty. Now company B goes and spends the same freaking 10 years doing the same thing and maybe not even as good. Now, game company C does the same thing. Rinse, repeat. It's just wasted potential. As a gamer, I think it's a disgrace that we have to be that greedy and do things that way. I believe that the engine should be publicly available. So what my goal is with this project, what I'm trying to do is get to a point. I'm probably going to launch a Kickstarter to fund myself and any assets that I need to purchase to make this a reality, because I can't do it all myself. And I want to make this a full-time effort because I'm passionate about it and I'm actually enjoying it. So, that takes money. I have to support myself. So do I quit my job? No, I'm not going to quit my job. So I'm going to have to do a Kickstarter or something and make this my job. But my thought is, what if I design it and I know that I'm not perfect and I'm not going to do the best job. I design it and I publish it for free to everybody in the world. I just put it out there. Not open source. I'm not talking about open source because I don't want to manage an open source project. I just want to put it out there on the marketplace for a $0 price tag so that any kid that's familiar with Unreal Engine can download the sucker, play around with it, tweak it a little bit, put his own little flavor into it, and try to make it simple enough that he can understand what he needs to change to do certain things. Um, Maybe over time write tutorials about different mechanics and stuff. And not only that, but let the community also build upon it and make add-ons or, kind of do an open source-ish type thing where people can suggest, hey, here's a much better way to do this. And they provide me with the code, I'll implement it into the project. But the problem with open source and IP is that somebody could slip in code from somebody else. And I have to maintain the control over that somehow because I need to make sure that assets are created genuinely. And we're not, last thing I want to do is for anybody to get sued. It may end up being turned into an open source project. I'm not all that familiar with how open source works, and that's funny. 30-year programmer, don't know how open source works. I haven't looked into GitHub. So at any rate, those are thoughts. That's where I hope to take this project, is to a free point for everybody to expand upon, improve upon, and make game development, all those years wasted on mechanics and stuff, just at your fingertips. You have a tried and true system that will work, that's simple. The secondary question behind that is, why have I converted everything to Blueprint? Because I believe firmly that Blueprint or something like it is the wave of the future. Programming is going away from C++. I love C++, but honestly, it's a headache. It is. For people to learn C++ is tough. I see things moving towards a visual development tool, and the problem with visual development today is that it's kind of virtualized. It converts the project into C++, which then converts it into machine language, because that's what Unreal Engine does. Now, I think that C++ will evolve into a visual programming language that will be closer to machine language and won't be as virtual, and it'll be just as efficient or almost as efficient as C++ is. That's what I think is going to happen. And I think that, moving towards a visual style of development is probably in my best interest. People say that you cannot build a multiplayer MMO on Unreal Engine and Blueprint, and I'm hoping to actually prove them wrong. I'm using best practices and trying to keep things streamlined, optimized, keeping replication down as much as I possibly can, yet keeping all core functionality on the server. I'm testing extensively. Sometimes I miss the mark, and it's like, oh, I need to replicate that. Well, how can I do it more efficiently? So anyhow, I'm sorry. I know that was an awful lot of blah, blah, blahing, but I hope I answered your questions and maybe some questions you didn't ask. And I hope that you're really excited about this. Now, I answered your questions. I have questions for you. Would you back a Kickstarter if I was to actually start one? I was considering this. Would you be willing to back a project like this? Do you think it's worth it for me to put a Kickstarter out there? Second question, or the second part is not a question, it's an ask. Share. I'm not a marketing guru. I'm not an advertising agent. The only people that see this video are you. There's no ads. I'm not broadcasting it across the world. I'm just showing it to my few friends that are on Discord and anybody that happens to ask me or stumble across it. So if you like what I'm doing and appreciate it, please share it. I'm not asking you for your money. I know I was just talking about Kickstarter and whether people would back it, but that's on you. If you want to back it, if you think it's worth it and I should do it, I'll do it. But I'm not necessarily asking for money or for views or likes or anything like that. Just get the word out. If you think that I'm onto something and I have a good idea, get the word out for me. let's see if we can grow this. Um, the more interest that I have in this, the more likely I am to continue to pursue it or, devote more time to it. I'm starting to hit that point where I don't see a ton of interest, but I do, and I feel like my improvements to the game engine are getting smaller and smaller, but also work is picking up. Because at the beginning of the year, the COVID vaccinations are kicking in, people are starting to go back to work, things are starting to change a little bit, so work is starting to pick up. Next week, I've got a big programming assignment that I'm going to be working on, so I'm going to be tied up with that. But yeah, spread the word. If you believe in me, what I'm doing, and you like what you see, have some other people check it out and leave your comments, and I'll try to answer your questions as best that I can. At any rate, thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry if this was a boring video. I'll try to make it shorter. Oh, no! I'll try to make it shorter and more exciting next time. I don't know if I'll have a whole lot of content, but if I don't have a lot of content, I'll make them short and sweet, and I'll just answer your questions. And maybe, if you have suggestions, please give me your feedback as well. I really appreciate that also. Again, you can join me on Discord. The link is in the description. You guys have a great week. Bye-bye.